So do you prefer quality or render time? If you want to learn how to export effectively in Adobe Premiere Pro, I got you covered. Follow along. Hey, what's up everyone, the Video Nerd here, and if you want to learn how to grow your Twitch, YouTube and social channels, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on future helpful content. Enjoy the video. First of all, I want to say that it's pretty important not to skip too much during this video, because missing a crucial step like, for example, adjusting the sequence frame rate can give you a different result. Sometimes during this tutorial I will mention settings for good quality and settings for maximum quality. The good quality is definitely enough for most of you, but if you really don't care about file size or render time and you want the best you can get, the maximum settings will give you a slight difference. I will include timestamps in the description and pin them so you can search for the information you want if you really want to skip steps or you are here for one specific thing. And after every important part in the video, I will add a quick summary just in case I was rambling too much. In general, when editing your videos, you should try to match your frame rate in every step of the process. So if you shoot your videos at 29 frames per second, you should try to use 29 frames per second in your sequence settings, and also export the video when rendering in 29 frames per second. So that's 3 times that you have to match your frame rate. Make sure that you do this. If you filmed all or some of your footage in a higher frame rate, for example 60 frames per second, just so you can slow them down when editing, I recommend that you set your sequence settings at 23 or 29. You will still be able to slow down your 60 frames per second shots for slow motion, but in the end you will export 23 or 29, which is a bit more smoother and feels more natural if it's not gaming videos. Because for gaming videos, 60 frames per second is preferable and YouTube does support it. So if you can record your games at 60 frames per second or higher, I recommend you to set your sequence frame rate at 60 and also export in 60. So like I said, because I ramble too much, to summarize, for normal videos, match the frame rate of your source. When you use some slow motion or high frame rate shots, still export in 23 or 29 frames per second, and for gaming videos, preferably 60 frames per second. Let's apply these settings now. To change your sequence settings, you have a few options. Since most of my viewers are gamers, I will explain a way that works for both gamers and people who film with a DSLR or a phone. You probably already have a sequence that you want to export, so go to your sequence in your project files. If you cannot find your sequence because you're a messy person or you have too many clips, go to the sequence tab in your timeline, right click it and select reveal sequence in project. Now your sequence will be highlighted and just right click the sequence file and select sequence settings. Here you can adjust the settings to the frame rate that you want. Choose 1920 by 1080 if this isn't the case. Now select the frame rate that you chose based on the things I already explained. For gamers that want to export at 60 frames per second, sometimes that's not listed, so you need to change your editing mode to custom, and now you can select 60 frames per second. To summarize this, right click the sequence tab and reveal sequence in project. Right click the sequence settings, set the frame size to 1920 by 1080. At the time base option, select your frame rate, and for gamers that can't select 60, change your editing mode to custom and time base to 60 frames per second. Then let's select our in and our out points of our video. You go to the point where you want your video to start. You right click the head of your slider and click mark in. Go to where you want the export to end and click mark out. When you're ready to render, go to File, Export, Media, and here at the bottom you can choose what you want to export. Standard, this will be your in and your out points, but you can also export your entire sequence, only your work area, or the last option is to select custom and use the triangles right here to select the in and the out points, but I don't recommend this. So to summarize this, mark your in and your out points by right-clicking the slider head and selecting mark in and mark out. And in the export screen, select your source range, sequence in and out, as we have selected the in and the out points already. So the first option at the top is format. Now it's too much to explain everything, so I will not go into details, but in general for YouTube you want to choose H.264. It uses a strong compression, but that's okay because YouTube compresses your videos anyway. Then for the preset we will be adjusting most of the settings, so let's just select custom. So for output name, you don't want to forget to change your export name and location, and make sure that export video and export audio are selected, because you will run into trouble if you don't select them, and you will only find out after waiting for your long rendering. Here a bit lower we have a few tabs: effects, videos, audio, multiplexer, captions and publish. For YouTube we will only focus on video and audio. We will change the encoding settings first, because making adjustments right here can suddenly change our resolution and it gets complicated. So first change your profile to high. For the level, 4.2 is perfectly fine for 1080p. If you really want the highest quality, you can select 5.1, but it won't make that big of a difference. Okay, now that these things are set up, for our resolution, since this is a 1080p export settings tutorial, we will select 1920 by 1080. Maybe I will make a 4K tutorial. If I do, I will link it in a card at the top. If you want me to make the tutorial, just ask in the comments and I will make an in-depth 4K export tutorial. Then for the frame rate, you have a few options. As I mentioned before, try to match the frame rate of your sequence. This will probably be 23.97 or 29.976 frames per second. For gamers it's different. If your PC is strong enough to record 60 frames per second or higher, go for it, and then use 60 frames per second in your sequence and in your export settings. This will also give a better viewing experience on YouTube, because YouTube supports uploads of 60 frames per second. Then a few settings that we don't want to touch. Your field order should stay progressive, your aspect should be square pixels, and let's leave the TV standard at NTSC. Then we have the render at maximum depth option. This is not needed for general gaming footage or video filmed with a webcam or phone, but if you applied a lot of color grading and effects on your footage, or you are exporting footage that was filmed with a high quality camera, turning this option on will increase the quality of your video. I will warn you, however, that this option will significantly increase your render time. So a quick summary to be clear: to save render time, always turn it off. For gaming, webcam or phone footage without heavy color grading, turn it off. With heavy color grading, turn it on. And when you have a high quality camera, always turn it on. Then for bitrate settings, for bitrate encoding, actually it's best quality and long render time versus very good quality and okay render time. For most people, VBR 2-pass is perfect. But if you're the type of person that wants to max everything out, you should select CBR for the best quality possible. Then for the target bitrate, when selecting VBR 2-pass, 14 target bitrate and 16 maximum is more than enough, because cranking these settings up as high as you can doesn't add much besides a lot of storage. The benefit of going over 14 to 16 megabits per second is small, because YouTube compresses your video anyway, but there is a small difference. So if you really want the highest quality possible, I suggest that you change your bitrate encoding to CBR and 40 megabits per second. To summarize this, for good quality, select VBR 2-pass and 14 target and 16 maximum megabits per second. And for the best quality, select CBR and 40 megabits per second. For the audio, there's not much to change. The basic settings will be okay, but in general, use AAC format, 48,000 Hz, stereo for the channels, and for the bitrate, anything above 192 kilobytes per second is great. I will leave this at 320. Then below we have the maximum render quality setting. This setting is something we use here at the Video Nerd. This option gives better video quality when you're scaling things. So when downscaling 4K footage to 1080p quality or upscaling 720p footage to 1080p, this option can help. But also, for example, when you're zooming into images that you overlay as B-roll on your video, then this also helps. So to summarize things, when you're scaling things in any way, enable this. And if you're not scaling any footage, just leave this turned off. Then the use preview setting. What this does is using the files that you already rendered while previewing when you were editing, and it will use these files to render your final export. We don't use this right here as we just fresh render everything, but we don't really care about render times. So if you care about render times, then enable this option because it will make things faster. So we are ready with setting everything up. You can now choose to export. You can do this in Premiere Pro, but this will lock the program, and there is a better option, and that's exporting with Adobe Media Encoder. So when we just click on Q, it will open the Adobe Media Encoder, if you have this installed, that is. Let's wait for Adobe Media Encoder to open, and then I will explain another thing that's useful with that program. So now we are in Adobe Media Encoder, and here we have another useful option. If you have a good NVIDIA graphics card, which a lot of gamers have, and that's the biggest part of our subscribers, there's an option that lets you use your graphics card to render. This is the CUDA option, and in most cases this will give you faster export times. So there's nothing left for us except pressing the play button to start rendering. Question of the video: are you the type of person that doesn't care about render time or file size and just maxes all the settings out like I do? Or are you a reasonable person that tries to find the balance? Let me know down in the comments because I'm really curious. And if you want more tips and tutorials to grow your Twitch, YouTube and social media channels, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on future helpful content. See you next time.